Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you. I walked out this morning and I wrote down this song. I just can't remember who to send it to. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again. Won't you look down upon me, Jesus? You gotta help me make a stand. You just got to see me through another day. My body's aching and my time is at hand. I won't make it any other way. Whoa, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. Seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again. Been walking my mind to an easy time, my back turned towards the sun. Lord knows when the cold wind blows, it'll turn your head around. Well, there's hours of time on the telephone line, so talk about things to come. Sweet dreams and flying machines in pieces on the ground. Whoa, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you, baby, one more time again now. Thought I'd see you one more time again. There's just a few things coming my way this time around now. Thought I'd see you finally now.
Well, afternoon everyone. My name is Michael, Warwick's son. I'll be officiating Dad's service, and thank you all for coming here today to celebrate Warwick. Dad's suggestion was that any funeral service should be no fuss, which is why we have skimped on the officiant, the celebrant, and I'm up here today for you. So, all humour aside, we're meeting here today at Parkside to celebrate the life of Warwick Michael Paske, who left us late last week, succumbing to his 6-year battle with cancer. Thank you again to all of you for attending today, whether you're here in person, watching online, or simply here in spirit. I will ask that if you do have your phones on loud, that they be turned to silent. And also any in attendance today will also be welcome just around the corner at Burnie Golf Club, who are kindly hosting us to gather for some food and drink at the conclusion of the service. Warwick, he was known by a number of names. For me, he was Dad or Faja. He was a brother, an Uncle Warwick, a mate, a son, and by his own making, I believe he was Wazza. He was Whoppy to some special little people, and simply was to many. Unfortunately, Dad left us last Thursday morning at the Northwest Regional Hospital, while in the presence of some he loved most, without pain and onto a better place. So yes, I'm representing the Paske family down here and his gorgeous partner Val when thanking a few people for their compassionate care of Dad through his journey. That includes the staff at the Northwest Regional Hospital, on the medical ward and in emergency in the last weeks and months of his life, and in oncology over the past 6 years. I'd also like to thank the staff at Peter McCallum Cancer Centre in Melbourne, where Dad had treatment for a number of months when he stayed with us in 2019. I'd also like to acknowledge a number of people that can't be with us today to celebrate Dad's life. And these include my own partner Amber, who's in Melbourne, a great friend Al in Europe, and Warwick's nephews Quentin, Marcus, and their families on the mainland. Of course, I would also like to remember those close to Dad that are no longer with us. His father Alf, the lovely Deborah Croom, and also his beloved sister-in-law Sandra Paske. Excuse me. Today we hope the service can be befitting of Dad's spirit, adventurous but gentle, loving and full of character. We trust that it's a time for reflection and an opportunity to consider a life well lived. Today is a sad day, but I trust at the end of today's ceremony that you'll feel glad that you took the opportunity to do some of your grieving in the presence of others who also love Warwick. I hope that our ceremony today allows all of us to fondly reflect and feel comfortable that we are sending him off in a fitting way. So, Warwick Michael Paske was born in Wynyard to parents Betty and Alfred Paske on the 2nd of October 1949. The middle of three boys, older brother Quentin came before him and younger brother Rohan followed soon after. Dad spent his early years in Cooey at the house in Burnell Street, where Nan still resides at 95 years young, who I think we can agree doesn't look a day over 75, as someone mentioned as well yesterday. He'd often told me stories of kites running by the road, racing the truck drivers. Childhood stories from the boys include mud pies and swims down at the beach before or after school. One story from Uncle Ro was that he and Dad were actually sleeping under the veranda down at Burnell Street. I think Quentin got the other room. But Dad was so excited to be reaching his teenage years that he woke up on his birthday and exclaimed to Nan, "Yes, I'm a teenager," despite him only turning 12 years old that birthday. Dad attended Cooey Primary School and Burnie High School, although he didn't think of himself much as a student at all. I think Dad always liked doing things a little bit differently. He enjoyed exploring as a kid, as he proved to want to do that full time when leaving home at the age of 15, taking off to the mainland to pursue a more global education. Dad told stories of meeting friends that would give him lifts or who he would stay with while he was fruit picking. As far as I know, that would be the first of many jobs Dad had in his years of being away. And I say jobs because it was really a lifestyle. I'm not sure anyone really knows the truth of what he got up to between the ages of about 15 and 30. But at stages, he worked at Mount Tom Price Mines in Western Australia. He worked on fishing vessels and sailboats around Asia, including the time around the Vietnam War. After a time back in Tasmania on the northwest coast at Detention River, he then settled into a fishing scene on the east coast of Tassie from about 1982. At that time, there was abalone diving, scallops, and for Dad, he found himself working on a crayfishing boat. He did always have a great connection to the sea. While stationed in St Helens, Dad also happened to meet a young teacher by the name of Mandy Quantrill, even living with her at the teacher's residence for a short time. He was well liked by Mandy's parents, although her mother, my Nan, had doubts when Warwick arrived to meet them sporting a feather earring. "What are you doing, Mandy? You didn't tell me he had an earring." Something you probably don't want to hear while you're in the presence. I don't believe he kept it in for too long after that. Of course, Warwick and Mandy went on to marry, and he and Billy shared a great relationship. But all that came down the track. Warwick married Mandy October 13th, 1984 at Windara Lodge, Latrobe, which is where Anvers Chocolate Factory sits today. Dad is still the only person I know to get married in a bomber jacket, but I hear it was all smooth sailing until cousin Samuel got kicked out purely for being a baby. Warwick and Mandy settled into their first house in Stiglitz while Dad was still crayfishing, and very close friends Sham and Nick were building just across the road. Dad shared his love of travel with Mum and with us, but of course they honeymooned in the Solomon Islands, followed by trips to Malaysia, Northern Africa and Europe, and it was on this trip that they had to request permission for Dad's to join the group. Given it was restricted to those between 18 and 35, Dad was 11 years older than Mum, and at the time he was 37. He was always creative, particularly with his building, so it was no surprise to anyone that he wanted to build a house of rammed earth that was essentially a hexagon inside a hexagon. It didn't turn out to be rammed earth, but the first family home was built. The out-of-the-box thinking continued for Dad, where he built a cement water tank underground, which worked. Sorry, Mum. But it would have been Mum's preference to have a backup, especially as when she was 8 months pregnant with my sister Kelsey, she was almost forced to an appointment without a shower. Luckily, she was saved by a friend. Kelsey, the blonde beauty, arrived as the miracle child in April of 1990, and myself 3 years after in 93. He was a loving and indeed a hands-on dad that showed great affection throughout our lives. In 1995, the family moved to Launceston for a short time, where Dad, as a self-proclaimed ball of muscle, when he did gymnastics earlier in life, escorted me to Jimbaroo for toddlers. Dad worked full-time over weekends on recovering and renovating their Dial Street house in Ulverston on the family return to the coast. And the majority of Dad's working life was in the building trade, including his work as a sole contractor, then having a great business with the late Jim Barty. And then on to MeadCon, before being forced into full-time retirement. Dad worked jobs as a teacher assistant in MDT at Ulverston High School, at the Northwest Regional Hospital as what I call the resident handyman, and in retail at K&D Warehouse here in Burnie. He also volunteered much of his time, both while living on the East Coast and up here on the Northwest. He was a member of the Volunteer Ambulance Service down the East and became in Rotary down there as well. But he did spend years as a member of the Rotary Club of Ulverston West, and he enjoyed aspects of this life among friends and colleagues, and was the president of the club in 2006, 2007. And I can see we have a few members of the Rotary Club here today, and thank you for coming along as well. Dad moved back to Burnie after living in Ulverston for quite some time, and shared a wonderful 10-year relationship with Deb Croom, renovating yet another house, this time out in Ocean Vista at Leonard Court. Deb brought something special into Dad's life over those 10 years, including the love of her family and friends before her tragic passing in 2015. Dad shared a close bond with his mum Betty after his return to Burnie, well, all through, but after his return to Burnie, and shared a bunch of great memories with his brothers, their families and friends, particularly camping trips and boating trips, where Dad seemed to have a crazy obsession with capturing photos of reflections on water. And I'm sure Phil Good and Phil Tidy will also be able to sort of back that up. Warwick had a diverse range of interests, including various sporting and recreational hobbies. These interests included the sport of hockey earlier in life, which I don't believe his dad Alf was actually very fond of, believing it was a girls' game. He was a footballer after all. Different times throughout life, Dad was a fisherman, a gymnast, an archer, a pilot, surfer, yachtsman, motorcyclist, skydiver, parasailer and hang glider. You'll actually see one of his old hang gliders sitting here, tracked down by Uncle Ro the last few days. He combined his lifelong love of motorbikes with travel on a number of occasions, which encouraged his love affair with India and the Himalayas. He was also a member of the Ulysses Club down here, and he was proud to have built his own bike, which you might see in the photos upcoming, nicknamed the Chopper. So during the past few years, Dad shared a very special bond with Valerie Waugh and her family, both sort of providing incredible support to each other and encouraging each other's love of life among family, travelling and spending time out at Rocky Cape. Just personally, I struggled to think of an answer when I asked myself what type of person Dad was. Because the only word I found that encompassed everything for me was simply Dad. But I think the man that most knew was an adventurer. He was always very practical, not just a fixer, but a creator. He was an easygoing and free spirit. He enjoyed diversity and experience and had a real connection to place, whether that be in the air, at sea or at home. Although at times introverted, he was a wonderful friend, and he had an air of confidence and conviction. If he set his mind to something, it was pretty difficult to stop him. A stubborn drive and determination, Kelsey thought, the embodiment of a true Paske. An example of such confidence came this week from an old friend, Scotchy through Row, who told he and Dad were once driving in an old 1948 Chevy. When climbing up a hill, the Chev blew up and settled on the side of the road. I'm not sure why or how, but they had some spare pistons in the boot. Apparently, Dad took off the sub, Scotchy the head, and they got the Chev put back together again there and then. It's not really something you ordinarily do on the side of the road, but that was the ingenuity of the guys. That same Chev actually, Dad Warwick was shown to his was to show his calm head again as the brakes failed on the way down into Launceston. With Scotchy driving, they went clear through a red light, of course, until the road flattened out. And by all reports, Scotchy was a bit of a wreck. So Dad calmly, he took over, jumping in and simply driving where they were going without the brakes, as easy as you like. Incredible. As difficult as this will be, my sister has chosen Kelsey to honour Dad by singing today, and she'll be accompanied by Cullen, Warwick's nephew, Cullen Paske, and following this we'll also take a bit of a trip down memory lane with some photos of the world of Warwick Paske, backed by a few songs that we think encapsulates his spirit. Please use this to remember Dad in a time of good health, sharing his life in the company of others, in places he loved, and representing the qualities that made him unique. So I'll ask the guys to come up.
Got to stay hydrated.
that last one was definitely my personal favourite. I think a common quality that Dad and I shared is a love for adventure and having a spirit that doesn't grow old. I often think of Peter Pan when reminded of this quality, and an underquoted piece, I think, from J.M. Barrie's book, Peter Pan, is, do you know why swallows build in the eaves of houses? It is to listen to the stories. Dad made many stories over the years, a number of which I've no doubt were never told, but he shared a number with dear friends, many of which are here today. I'll ask one very dear friend to come up and speak of shared times and the importance of friendship, of which Sham and Dad shared for, I believe, 48 years. Sham, if you'd like to come up.
Hi everyone and welcome. Sharon Johnston is my name. Most will know me as Sham. In celebration of Warwick's well-lived life, Kelsey and Michael have kindly asked me to share a few words and memories. Immediately, I knew true friendship is what I needed to speak about. Was not a huge social media contributor. However, he would be most impressed by his online Facebook persona at the moment because it's never looked busier. And reading through the online heartfelt tributes illustrates how sincere and true his friendship was to many. And I'm sure my sentiments are the same to all of you who knew him as a friend. Oscar Wilde, the Irish poet and playwright, once said, "Friendship is far more tragic than love, it lasts longer." That being, friendship is a connection that lasts longer than any other because of one strong element in which it even a love relationship lacks, and that is no expectations. So as Michael said, 48 years ago in 1972, myself and a few other wonderful friends first met Warwick at Andy Morris's hot rod shed in Cooey, not far from here. And it was halcyon days, a time of fun, motorbikes, bell-bottoms, headbands, caftans, embroidered vests, paisley shirts and Vietnam War drafts. And our subsequent meetings soon became weekend jaunts in that Chevy that Scotchy spoke about. And a gang of us would head off for picnics and exploring to a bush spot up behind Stowport, which we called Flat Rock. I'm not sure whether that is its name, but that's what we called it because it was a flat rock. It was a slow old trip as our mode of transport was Warwick's impressive, stately vintage car that had running boards on the side. And we all used to hang off them along muddy tracks, but of course that added to the fun. And sometimes we caught the now protected blue freshwater crays, and just in case we didn't have any luck, we had bacon and eggs for backup, whipped up by Andy. Over the years, Warwick and I lost each other due to travelling, work and life's commitments, but always managed to find each other again and picked up from just where we left off. And one such time was in the early 80s. Our paths crossed, walking past the top pub in St Helens, which is no longer there. It's burnt down. Warwick was fishing for a living and had ambled into town with his trusty companion, Ramu, a black and white Bitzer dog who was as laid back and as wise as her master. We regularly looked after Ramu when Warwick went to sea, and she slotted into the household with ease and a pleasure to have around. And Ramu did not know what a dog lead was because she was as much of a free spirit as her keeper. And Warwick loved her to bits. So these were the days when friends just popped in to say hi on the off chance you were home, and when Warwick visited, you always had that familiar comforting feeling of putting on the kettle for a coffee and a natter. And he was always interested in what you were doing. He was knowledgeable, gentle, fun, caring, just comfortable in his own skin. And he gave you what was most valuable, his time. And there's comfort and security in knowing that a friend is there for you in all of your days. They have your back, support you, check on you, and words are not needed. And Warwick did all of this. The last 20 years, time spent with him has been more regular. Distance wasn't a barrier, and we always managed to catch up going to concerts, to see the Eagles, Joe Cocker, and lots of reggae and blues gigs in Melbourne. And then there were the oh-so-memorable funny home gatherings accompanied by delicious food, wine, dancing, laughter and good conversation, and we had many of those. One night in particular springs to mind, and we titled it The Roasts That Refused to Cook. And Warwick actually never let me live this down, but John and I had moved back to Tassie for work, and Warwick came to stay because we hadn't seen him in person for a while, so had lots to catch up on, and it was always a good excuse to eat together. The lamb roast went in the oven, and we all settled in for a pre-dinner drink because he was quite partial to a good fine of glass of red. But this roast seemed to be taking so long to cook, and in the meantime, the red wine kept flowing whilst we waited. Eventually, the problem was diagnosed, and we ate far later than planned. It was a new oven, by the way. And but the next day, when we all regrouped to chat about the night before and said how great it was, somebody in the group did say, "Yeah, by the way, what did we eat last night?" Because none of us could clearly remember. Warwick's talents were many, and our home in Melbourne is testament to that. On one occasion when he came to stay, he was at a loose end, so he extended our back deck and added a roof over it to our delight. And on that same back deck stands today a piece of macrocarpa pine tree root resembling a flying pig that he once gave to me in the 80s, all polished up looking like a beautiful piece of sculpture, which I treasure dearly. And I've carted it around for years from house to house because of its sentimental value. He left a unique footprint on the earth. He didn't simply visit the world. He embraced the world with open arms and an insatiable curiosity. He lived his life to the full, and now his spirit can fly high. True friends are the family you choose, and I'm very grateful to have met Warwick and had him as part of my family. And Warwick, we will miss you, but you have left us all with a garland of memories we will wear for the end of our days. Safari and Gemma. Thank you.
Thanks, Shem. Wonderful. Kelsey and I will share a little bit more particularly about Dad to us.
So we had many car rides when we were little to visit family, and we'd often play the classic games like I Spy, except Dad would tell me all about the fluffy rocks. And it was some time later that others knew them as sheep. Dad would take me out on the grounds around our St Helens home, the one that Michael talked about, our hexagonal house. We'd find echidnas, snakes, and at the age of about 3, I was allowed to go out on the motorbike with Dad, of course. It was one of my favourite things to do, and you saw a photo of us. Each time we either came out for the weekends or I came home from Melbourne, I'd ask whether we could take the bike out. Mum, on the other hand, didn't really appreciate the bike, but Michael and I convinced her one day that she should take it to work. We could hear her screams as she reached the corner of Dial Street with Michael and I in fits of giggles. Dad shared his love of baking with me, and on weekends he would teach Bronnie Hart and I how to make brownies. He cooked his way through the Women's Weekly birthday cake book, with Michael and I sampling most of the cakes over the years, the swimming pool, stovetop, castle and racetrack. He'd let me paint his toenails, however one day forgetting to take it off before a Rotary dinner. Dad was very patient with lots of girls' sleepovers and chaperoned all Spice Girls performances that would take place at the sound show. I often remember being woken during the middle of the night when a friend stayed over. They could hear something and were absolutely terrified. I just laughed it off and assured them it was only Dad snoring. One particular memory is that when I was growing up and becoming a woman, I promised Mum that she could never tell Dad when I got my period. Well, after they separated, my monthly visitor arrived, but this time at Dad's. Now, I wasn't going to be caught buying sanitary products in Ulverston at age 11, so I plucked up the courage to tell Dad, and I said, "Dad, I need supplies." And he just looked at me and he just said, "Well, what are you talking about?" I said, "I need supplies," and just looked down. Oh, okay. Gotcha. So he very gratefully came back with an assortment of everything that I could choose from. And incredibly, I was incredibly grateful that I didn't have to purchase those for the next few years either. Ever the entertainer, both Mum and Dad hosted many dinner parties in St Helens and that have been fondly recalled, particularly by a number of friends in recent days or in the past week. He certainly was a sweet tooth and known at family celebrations as the king of desserts. He loved Nan's trifle, Christine's sponge cakes and Sandra's cassata, but had the cheesecake sorted. He loved travelling, and I remember him telling us about leaving home at the age of 15. He started his ventures around different parts of Australia before venturing onto fishing boats around Asia, as Michael said. One of our favourite memories is just the number of details that would be shared, perhaps after a glass of red wine or two. Oh yeah, I flew one of those one day. Or back when I was working on a fishing boat in Indonesia. After Mum and Dad separated, we were fortunate to continue travelling with both of them. We toured around Victoria with Dad and had a ski trip to Mount Buller, finishing with a visit to Sham and the Lion King in Melbourne. True to Michael's sporting prowess, he jumped on skis and could ski. I, on the other hand, was stuck in beginner's lessons with a lovely bunch of middle-aged women who provided me with gentle encouragement. On the third day, Dad said, "I've had enough of this. I'm not paying for beginner's lessons anymore." So up the top I went, and he was right. He gave me a helpful push down the mountain, and I snowploughed to my heart's content. Dad was a budding entrepreneur, coming up with many ideas around how he was going to make his fortune. He loved India, and with a friend he met during his Himalayan motorbike trip, he looked into starting a touring company. However, he then had his heart set on a toy shop in Ulverston called The Funky Monkey. Some of you may have seen his handcrafted gorilla that was going to be the mascot of that store. Apparently Dad often imparted teaching like Alf, our pop. And if he told you once, you're just expected to know how to do it. Rohan recalled taking out the catamaran with Dad, something they purchased together. Dad passing over the steering, driving, however you call it, to Rohan and said, "Right, your turn." That was it, no further instruction. And they capsized a few short moments afterwards. I remember my second attempt at driving Dad's manual became my last. I turned into the big hill over West Ulverston and stalled out as I edged that way up the hill. I turned to Dad and just said, "What do I do?" Panicked. And he calmly just said something about the clutch and the brake, but it wasn't enough for me and it wasn't quick enough. So I pulled the handbrake, jumped out of the car, and then we both agreed that perhaps I should stick to an automatic.
Seconded.
During my teenage years, Dad and I could often butt heads, mostly because sometimes we lacked the communication that we so desperately needed in each other. But when we did share and come together, it was pretty special. Over the years, we've confided in each other about things we didn't feel comfortable talking about with others, and I'll always cherish that. Dad was brave, sometimes stubborn, but he was stable, and during times of adversity, you knew he was always there. He could be bold and an entertainer, but to us, we understood him as an extroverted introvert. He loved children. He adored being Whoppy to Mabel, and loved his play dates with Ellie and receiving beautiful drawings from Liam. He would often pick up a little something when he visited trade fairs or markets. He always put a lot of thought and care into selecting jewellery, and I and other family members will have pieces we will always treasure. Whenever he saw a picture with me with a baby, he would say, "It suits you." And then we'd have a laugh about me needing a viable donor. He used to be set on setting me up with Luke from MeadCon, and each time I would come home. But in recent years, he said, "There's no need to rush." Well, one day I do hope that it will suit me, and I will tell my children all about their wild man Pop and his many adventures. Dad certainly lived, and he encouraged both Michael and I to do the same. When I wasn't sure about trying new things or exploring new places, I would call Dad. I remember calling him from Medellin in Colombia and asking whether I should take a detour and go to Cuba with two new friends I'd met. He just said, "Would you regret it if you didn't?" That's how he lived. He may have made mistakes, but he avoided having regrets. He would have loved Colombia, and we talked about visiting many times. He did many of the things on his bucket list, but of those remaining wishes he had, visiting Rhodes, flying in a glider, going back to Portugal, both Michael and I will continue. And we hope he finds comfort that we will take him with us for each new adventure.
That we will. I think Dad would have liked to think he taught me a bit more of his practicality, maybe. And I can probably think that Brandon's laughing up the back end of the room. And his work with his hands and building. But what he might not have realised is that he taught me much more important things. To love deeply, to take risks, to respect when the battle is won, but most of all to live in the present. He remarked to me when I was only young, when I asked about his retirement plans. Dad suggested that he'd seen his father's friends retire and basically start dropping like flies. So he chose to have his retirement early, through his 20s, and he really did. I think he definitely did have that early retirement, and I guess it's just a cruel twist that he did have his retirement taken away from him. More recently, I learned from him never to trust hospital food, that naps on the couch can be referred to as just resting your eyes, but also that strength and courage takes many different forms. Having a certain zest for life, a respect for the challenges we face, and that the end of it all, if we can say, I've had a good life, which Dad did, then that's all that matters.
We miss you so much already, Dad. But boy, are we proud. Thank you for waiting for us to be together. We love you and we always will.
As Kelsey alluded to, there was basically one thing that Dad would have loved to do before he left us, and that was to fly again in a glider. I actually stumbled across a quote the other day that probably summed up Dad's attitude a little bit. And apologies, Nan. It was, I'd rather be in my glider thinking about God than be in church thinking about my glider. And that's definitely how Dad lived. Just last week, he commented to me that he'd never been someone to worry about what he couldn't control. So he just took every opportunity that came to him. And we'll hope to live that way as well. As we pay respect to Warwick's life, we bid him a sad but fond farewell. However you guys remember Dad, or whichever era of his life you met, please consider the time that you had with him and leave something as a dedication. And we've got a few sort of tokens up the front here that we can leave with Dad as well. Our family here will first take something from the box that reminds us of Dad and dedicate it to Dad Warwick as a final gesture of our continued love and fond memories of a life well lived. So thank you all for attending today and celebrating Warwick. A strong ship is now carried in the breeze. The wrinkles of his sails spread tight, and the labour of the tempest is in his wake. A sailor of the sea is returned home, and his spirit now soars rightfully beside his eagles. Thanks.
When you're down and troubled and you need some love and care, and nothing is going right, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there door. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running, running, yeah, yeah, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there, yes I will. Now ain't it good to know that you've got a friend when people can be so cold? They'll hurt you, yes, and desert you, and take your soul if you let them. Oh, but don't you let them. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running, running, yeah, yeah, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there, yes I will. You've got a friend. You've got a friend. Ain't it good to know you've got a friend? Ain't it good to know? Ain't it good to know? Ain't it good to know you've got a friend? Oh yeah, now you've got a friend. Yeah, baby, you've got a friend. Oh yeah, you've got a friend.
Follow, follow the sun, and which way the wind blows when this day is done. Breathe, breathe in the air, set your intentions, dream with care. Tomorrow's a new day for everyone, a brand new moon and brand new sun. So follow, follow the sun, the direction of the birds, the direction of love. Breathe, breathe in the air, moment, cherish this breath. Tomorrow's a new day for everyone. A brand new moon, brand new sun. When you feel life coming down on you like a heavy weight, when you feel this crazy society adding to the strain, take a stroll to the nearest water's edge. Remember your place.